The steering wheel felt like ice beneath Damien Caldwell's white-knuckled grip as he pulled into the dimly lit parking lot of Murphy's Diner. His Porsche Cayenne looked ridiculously out of place among the rusted pickup trucks and aging sedans, like a diamond thrown into a pile of gravel. The engine's purr died, leaving only the sound of his ragged breathing and the distant hum of neon lights spelling out, "Open 24/7, in flickering pink letters. His phone buzzed again. Another notification. Another congratulations message about her wedding tomorrow. Damien's jaw clenched as he stared at the screen, watching the endless stream of heart emojis and celebration posts flooding his Instagram feed. 3 million followers, and every single one of them seemed to know that his ex-fiancée was marrying someone else in less than 18 hours. "Damn it, Vivian," he whispered, his voice cracking on her name. The memory hit him like a freight train, standing in their penthouse kitchen 6 months ago, watching her slide the engagement ring across the marble counter like it was contaminated. "I can't do this anymore, Damien. I can't be your perfect accessory. I need someone real." Real. The word had haunted him ever since. Now she was marrying Dr. Richard Hayes, a pediatric surgeon who probably saved lives instead of selling overpriced athletic wear to teenagers. The wedding invitation had arrived 3 weeks ago. Cream-colored cardstock with gold lettering that might as well have been a slap across his face. Of course she'd invited him. Vivian always did love her dramatic gestures. His hands shook as he scrolled through the wedding hashtag. Vivian finds her forever. The irony wasn't lost on him that she'd found her forever exactly 7 months after throwing away theirs. The diner's door chimed as he pushed it open, the warmth hitting his face like a gentle slap. The place smelled of bacon grease and coffee that had been sitting too long, but it was real in a way his penthouse never felt. Authentic, lived in, everything Vivian had accused him of not being. A woman with auburn hair piled into a messy bun looked up from behind the counter, her green eyes immediately taking in his expensive suit, and the way he stood like he'd never been in a place that didn't have valet parking. "Well, well," she said, her voice carrying a hint of Vermont accent and a whole lot of attitude. "Let me guess. GPS took a wrong turn and landed you in the land of actual working people." Despite everything, Damien felt his mouth twitch upward. When was the last time someone had spoken to him like that? Like he was just a person? "Something like that," he said, sliding into a booth that had seen better decades. "Coffee?" "Coming right up, Prince Charming." She grabbed a pot and moved toward him with the kind of confidence that came from years of dealing with every type of person imaginable. "Fair warning, though. Our coffee's strong enough to wake the dead, and our sympathy's in pretty short supply." As she poured the steaming liquid into his cup, Damien caught sight of her name tag, Harper. Something about the way she carried herself, like she'd been knocked down plenty of times but kept getting back up, made his chest tight. "Rough night?" she asked, noticing how his hands trembled slightly as he reached for the sugar. Damien looked up into those sharp green eyes and felt something crack open inside his chest. "You could say that. Want to talk about it, or should I just keep the coffee coming?" For the first time in months, Damien Caldwell, heir to a billion-dollar empire, Instagram influencer, and certified mess, actually smiled. "Keep the coffee coming, but stick around." Harper Lee had served plenty of heartbroken men in her 3 years at Murphy's Diner, but none of them had worn a suit that probably cost more than her annual rent. She refilled Damien's cup for the 4th time, watching him stare at his phone like it held the secrets of the universe, or maybe just pictures of whatever had destroyed him tonight. "So," she said, sliding into the booth across from him without invitation. "Let me guess. Rich boy problems? Stock market crash? Your yacht got repossessed?" Damien looked up, and Harper was surprised by the genuine pain in his dark eyes. "My ex-fiancée is getting married tomorrow." Ouch. Harper pulled a Dr. Pepper from her apron pocket and cracked it open. "That's rough. How long since you two?" 6 months. He ran his hands through his perfectly styled hair, messing it up in a way that made him look more human. "She said I wasn't real enough, whatever that means." Harper snorted. "Coming from someone who's probably never worked a day in her life, I'm guessing." "She's a successful event planner," Damien said defensively, then caught himself. "But yeah, family money, trust fund. And let me guess, she's marrying someone who saves puppies and feeds orphans. Pediatric surgeon." "Of course she is." Harper took a long sip of her soda, studying him. There was something almost boyish about his vulnerability, like underneath all that expensive cologne and designer fabric was just a guy who'd been kicked in the gut. So what's the plan? Show up alone and pretend you're over it? Damien's laugh was bitter. That was the idea. Though considering I'm currently having a breakdown in a diner at 11 p.m., I'm not sure how convincing I'll be. Harper's phone buzzed. A text from her mom. Can't sleep. The voices are loud tonight. When are you coming home? Her stomach clenched. Another sleepless night ahead. Another day of watching her mother disappear a little more into the darkness that had swallowed her whole after Dad died. Another day of choosing between groceries and therapy copays. You know what your problem is? Harper said, shoving her phone back in her pocket. You're thinking too small. What do you mean? You show up alone and everyone feels sorry for you. Poor Damien couldn't keep his woman happy. She leaned forward, an idea crystallizing in her mind. A crazy, probably stupid idea that could solve both their problems. But you show up with someone spectacular? Someone who steals the entire show? Then you're the one who upgraded. Damien stared at her. Are you suggesting I hire an escort? I'm suggesting you take me. The words hung in the air between them like a dare. Harper couldn't believe she'd actually said it, but now that she had, the idea felt less crazy and more like destiny. You? Damien's eyebrows shot up. No offense, but what? I'm just a waitress. Harper's voice sharpened. Trust me, I clean up nice. And unlike your usual crowd, I actually have a personality that doesn't require a user manual. This is insane. Is it? You need a date who'll make your ex jealous. She hesitated, thinking of her mother's medical bills, the eviction notice tucked behind her coffee maker, the dream of culinary school that got further away every month. I need $5,000. Damien nearly choked on his coffee. 5,000? Hey, you want spectacular? Spectacular costs money. Hair, makeup, dress, shoes, and my time. Take it or leave it. You don't even know me. I could be a serial killer. Harper laughed, the sound sharp and genuine. Honey, serial killers don't cry into their coffee at truck stop diners. They have better self-control. She studied his face, noting the way his shoulders had straightened, how the hopelessness in his eyes was being replaced by something that looked almost like excitement. Besides, what's the worst that could happen? I embarrass you in front of your rich friends? Actually, Damien said slowly, a smile tugging at the corner of his mouth, that might be exactly what I need. Harper extended her hand across the table. Deal? For a moment, Damien just stared at her outstretched palm. Then, with the reckless abandon of a man who had absolutely nothing left to lose, he reached out and shook it. Deal. But Harper, yeah, when I said spectacular, I meant it. Harper grinned, the kind of smile that had been getting her into trouble since she was 5 years old. Trust me, millionaire boy, you have no idea what you just signed up for. Harper stared at her reflection in the floor-to-ceiling mirrors of Bella's boutique in downtown Burlington, feeling like she'd accidentally wandered into someone else's life. The black Chanel dress clung to her curves in ways that made her forget she'd spent the last 3 years hiding behind baggy uniform shirts and coffee-stained aprons. This is insane, she muttered, running her hands down the silk fabric that probably cost more than her car. You look stunning, said Celestine, the boutique owner who'd nearly fainted when Damien walked in with his Black American Express card and a simple request. Make her unforgettable. Harper's phone buzzed. Another text from her mom. Where are you? I need my pills. Can't find them anywhere. Her stomach twisted. She'd hidden the antidepressants after finding her mother with the entire bottle in her hands last week, counting them like rosary beads. I have to go, Harper said, reaching for the zipper. Absolutely not. Celestine blocked her path. Mr. Caldwell specifically said you were not to leave until you felt like the goddess you are. Mr. Caldwell can what? Damien's voice came from behind her, and Harper spun around to find him leaning against the doorframe, looking like he'd stepped off the cover of GQ. The tailored navy suit made his dark eyes look almost black, and his hair was perfectly styled again, erasing any trace of the broken man from the diner. Nothing, Harper said quickly, shoving her phone back in her purse. Just, this feels like playing dress-up. Damien stepped closer, his eyes never leaving hers in the mirror. You look... He stopped, swallowed hard. You look like you could break hearts professionally. Heat crept up Harper's neck. Flattery will get you everywhere, millionaire boy. It's not flattery if it's true. His voice was soft, intimate in a way that made her skin tingle. Harper, you realize every man at that wedding is going to hate me for having you on my arm? Good. That's the point, right? But even as she said it, Harper felt something shift in her chest. The way he was looking at her, like she was precious, like she mattered. It was dangerous. This was supposed to be business. A transaction. She couldn't afford to forget that. Celestine appeared with strappy black heels that added 4 inches to Harper's height. "Final touch," she announced, kneeling to buckle them around Harper's ankles. "I'm going to break my neck in these things." "You're going to break necks in those things," Damien corrected, offering his arm. "Come on, let's practice walking." Harper took his arm and immediately understood why women in movies swooned. He was solid, warm, and smelled like expensive cologne mixed with something uniquely him. They took a few tentative steps across the boutique, Harper wobbling slightly. "Easy," Damien murmured, his hand covering hers on his arm. "Just think elegant thoughts." "Elegant thoughts? I'm from Vermont. The most elegant thing I know is maple syrup on pancakes." Damien laughed. A real laugh this time, not the bitter sound from the diner. "Then think about maple syrup. Whatever works." They walked in a slow circle around the boutique, Harper gradually finding her rhythm. With each step, she felt herself transforming. Not just her appearance, but something deeper. The way she held her shoulders, the confidence creeping into her stride. "Better?" Damien asked. "Better." Harper caught sight of them in the mirror. A stunning couple that looked like they belonged on magazine covers. For a moment, she let herself imagine this was real, that she was the kind of woman who wore Chanel and had men like Damien Caldwell looking at her like she was the only person in the room. Her phone rang. Mom's ringtone. "I have to take this," Harper said, stepping away from Damien. "Harper, where are you? I'm scared. The apartment feels too big and too small at the same time. I can't breathe right." Harper's chest tightened. "Mom, I need you to count to 10 for me, okay? Just breathe. I'll be home in an hour." "An hour? But what if—" "Mom." Harper's voice was firm but gentle. "Remember what Dr. Martinez said? You're safe. You're in your apartment. I'm coming home." She hung up and found Damien watching her with concern. "Everything okay?" "Fine," Harper lied, then caught herself. If they were going to do this, if she was going to sell this illusion, she couldn't fall apart now. "My mom has anxiety. I usually don't leave her alone this long." Something shifted in Damien's expression. Understanding, maybe. Or recognition. "Does she have help? Professional help?" "Some. It's complicated." Harper smoothed down the dress, suddenly feeling exposed in more ways than one. "The wedding's tomorrow, right? What time do I need to be ready?" Damien studied her for a long moment, and Harper had the unsettling feeling he could see right through her carefully constructed walls. 2 p.m. I'll pick you up at 1:30. "Okay." She started toward the dressing room, then paused. "Damien?" "Yeah? Thank you. For the dress, for all of this. It means more than you know." When he smiled this time, it reached his eyes. "Thank you for saving me from showing up alone and pathetic." "Oh, honey," Harper grinned, feeling more like herself again. "We're going to do so much better than not pathetic." As she changed back into her uniform, Harper caught one last glimpse of herself in that Chanel dress. Tomorrow, for just a few hours, she was going to be someone else entirely, someone who belonged in Damien's world. The question was, would she be able to find her way back when it was all over? The Shelburne Museum's lakeside pavilion looked like something out of a fairy tale, with white roses cascading from every surface and string lights twinkling against the backdrop of Lake Champlain. Harper stepped out of Damien's Porsche and immediately understood why people paid obscene amounts of money for weddings like this. It was designed to make mere mortals feel inadequate. "You ready for this?" Damien asked, offering his arm. He looked devastatingly handsome in his charcoal gray suit, but Harper could see the tension in his jaw, the way his fingers drummed against his leg. "Are you?" she countered, smoothing down the Chanel dress one last time. "Because you look like you're about to face a firing squad." "Feels like it." He took a deep breath. "Okay, here's what you need to know. Vivian's parents hate me. They think I corrupted their precious daughter with my shallow lifestyle. Her friends think I'm an overprivileged brat, and her new husband is probably going to try to psychoanalyze me over cocktails." "Sounds delightful." Harper squeezed his arm. "Good thing I'm excellent at making people uncomfortable." They walked toward the entrance, Harper's heels clicking confidently on the stone pathway. She'd practiced for an hour this morning, and now she moved like she'd been born in designer shoes. Several heads turned as they passed, whispers following in their wake. "Damien?" A woman's voice, bright and artificial. "Oh my God, Damien Caldwell!" They turned to see a perfectly coiffed blonde in a pink dress that probably cost more than Harper's monthly salary. Her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. "Madison," Damien said, his voice carefully neutral. You look pink. Madison's eyes slid to Harper like a snake sizing up prey. And who is this lovely creature? Harper Lee, Harper said before Damien could respond, extending her hand with a smile that matched Madison's for sharpness. And you must be one of Vivian's friends. I can tell by the way you're looking at Damien like he's a steak and you haven't eaten in weeks. Madison's mouth fell open. Excuse me? Oh, did I misread that? My mistake. Harper's smile turned innocent. I'm still learning to navigate these social situations. Back home in Vermont, we're a bit more direct. Vermont, Madison repeated, like it was a communicable disease. Beautiful place, Harper continued cheerfully. Though I suppose when you spend your time in places like this, you forget there's a whole world out there where people actually work for a living. Damien coughed, and Harper was pretty sure he was trying not to laugh. Madison's face had gone an interesting shade of red that clashed with her dress. How refreshing, Madison managed. Well, I should go find my seat. The ceremony's about to start. As she hurried away, Damien leaned down to whisper in Harper's ear. That was Madison Hartwell. Her family owns half of Connecticut, and now she knows that someone from Vermont can eat her alive without breaking a sweat. Harper grinned. Feeling better yet? Actually, yes. Damien's smile was genuine now. Come on, let's go watch my ex-fiancée marry Dr. Perfect. They found seats in the back, Harper grateful for the chance to observe before being thrust into more social combat. The venue was stunning, filled with Vermont's elite dressed in their finest. But Harper's attention was drawn to the woman standing at the altar in an elaborate white gown. Vivian Cross was beautiful in the way that money could buy. Perfect hair, perfect makeup, perfect posture. But there was something brittle about her perfection, like a porcelain doll that might shatter if you looked at it too hard. She's lovely, Harper said quietly, and meant it. She is. Damien's voice was soft, complicated. She's also terrified of being anything less than perfect. I used to think that made us compatible. And now I'm sitting next to a woman who just told Madison Hartwell that she eats rich people for breakfast, and I've never been more entertained in my life. Harper felt warmth spread through her chest at his words. The ceremony's starting. As Vivian walked down the aisle, Harper watched Damien's face carefully. She saw sadness there, yes, but not the devastating heartbreak she'd expected. More like grief for something that had never really existed in the first place. You okay? She whispered. Damien looked at her, really looked at her, and Harper felt something electric pass between them. You know what? I think I am. The ceremony was beautiful and impersonal, full of generic vows and orchestrated emotions. But Harper found herself studying the groom, Dr. Richard Hayes. He was handsome in a quiet way, with kind eyes and gentle hands. When he looked at Vivian, it was with the kind of reverence that suggested he genuinely believed he was the luckiest man alive. He loves her, Harper observed. Yeah, Damien agreed. He does, more than I ever did if I'm being honest. As the couple exchanged rings, Harper felt Damien's hand find hers. His fingers were warm, steady, and when she looked up at him, she saw something that made her heart skip. What? She whispered. Nothing, he said, but his thumb traced across her knuckles in a way that suggested it was definitely something. Just thank you for being here, for being you. The reception's where the real fun starts, Harper reminded him, trying to ignore the way her skin tingled where he touched her. I'm counting on it. Damien's smile was different now, less desperate, more confident. Think you can handle a few more Madisons? Harper squeezed his hand. Honey, I'm just getting warmed up. As the newly married couple kissed and the crowd erupted in applause, Harper realized something that terrified and thrilled her in equal measure. This wasn't feeling like a business arrangement anymore. It was starting to feel dangerously real. The reception hall at the Lake Champlain Resort buzzed with Vermont's social elite. Champagne flutes clinking against a backdrop of jazz music and carefully orchestrated conversations. Harper had never seen so many people trying so hard to look effortlessly elegant. She felt like an anthropologist studying a foreign culture, one where small talk was an art form and authentic emotions were strictly forbidden. Damien, darling. A silver-haired woman in emerald silk descended upon them like a perfectly groomed vulture. How wonderful to see you. And who is this enchanting creature? Mrs. Cross, Damien said, his smile tight. This is Harper Lee. Harper, this is Vivian's mother, Patricia Cross. Patricia's eyes swept over Harper like a metal detector, cataloging every detail. Harper Lee. How literary. And what do you do, dear? Harper felt Damien tense beside her. but she kept her smile bright. I'm in the hospitality industry. How lovely. Hotel management? Food service, actually. I'm a waitress at Murphy's Diner in Williston. Harper's voice carried just enough pride to make it clear she wasn't ashamed of her work. Best coffee in Vermont if you ever find yourself in the area. Patricia's smile could have frozen Lake Champlain. How authentic. Isn't it? Harper agreed cheerfully. You know, I've learned more about people serving coffee than I ever did in any classroom. Take you, for instance. I'm betting you prefer your coffee black. No sugar, no cream, because you think anything else is weakness. Excuse me? Your handshake earlier. Firm, but not too firm. Exactly 3 seconds. Your posture. Military straight. Designed to intimidate. And the way you're looking at me right now, like you're trying to figure out if I'm a threat or just entertainment. Harper tilted her head thoughtfully. I'm going with threat. Patricia blinked rapidly, clearly not used to being psychoanalyzed by the help. Well, there's someone I need to speak with. As Patricia retreated, Damien stared at Harper with something approaching awe. Did you just profile Vivian's mother using waitressing skills? People are people. Harper shrugged. Rich or poor, they all have tells. Your ex-mother-in-law that never was just happens to be the type who needs to establish dominance in every interaction. And what's my tell? Harper studied his face, noting the way his left hand unconsciously straightened his tie when he was nervous, how his smile never quite reached his eyes when he was performing for others. You ask questions when you're actually afraid of the answers. Before Damien could respond, the DJ's voice crackled over the speakers. Ladies and gentlemen, please join the bride and groom on the dance floor for their first dance. Harper watched as Vivian and Richard moved together to some generic love song, their movements perfectly choreographed and utterly lifeless. Around them, couples began joining in, a sea of practiced elegance that felt more like performance than passion. Should we? Damien asked, offering his hand. I should probably warn you, Harper said, accepting it. I learned to dance in a honky-tonk bar. This might not be my finest moment. Good, Damien said, leading her onto the floor. I'm tired of finest moments. The music shifted to something with more soul, and Harper found herself pressed against Damien's chest, his hand warm on the small of her back. He moved with the kind of confidence that came from expensive lessons, but when Harper pulled back slightly and began moving to her own rhythm, something more real, more alive, he followed her lead. You're full of surprises, he murmured against her ear. You ain't seen nothing yet. As the song continued, Harper became aware that they were being watched. Not just casual glances, but phones being raised, whispered conversations behind manicured hands. A young woman with purple streaks in her perfectly styled hair was filming them, probably for TikTok. We're becoming a spectacle, Harper observed. Is that a problem? Harper looked around at all the faces staring at them. Some curious, some disapproving, some openly envious. These people who had probably never worked a day in their lives, who thought they were better than her because of their bank accounts and bloodlines. A wild idea began forming in her head. Actually, she said, spinning away from Damien and then back into his arms with a move that would have fit perfectly in any Vermont roadhouse. I think we should give them something worth filming. Before Damien could ask what she meant, Harper broke away from the traditional waltz position and began dancing like herself, not the polished version in the Chanel dress, but the real Harper who had learned to move to country music and classic rock, who wasn't afraid to take up space or look foolish. The effect was electric. Conversations stopped. Phones appeared. And when Damien, after a moment of shock, began matching her energy instead of trying to contain it, the entire reception became their audience. They moved together like they'd been dancing for years. Harper's authentic joy, infectious enough to transform Damien's careful composure into something raw and real. When the song ended, the applause was thunderous and not entirely approving. Well, said a familiar voice behind them, that was certainly memorable. They turned to find Vivian approaching, still in her elaborate wedding gown, but with something sharp in her eyes that hadn't been there during the ceremony. Vivian, Damien said, his arm still around Harper's waist. Congratulations. You look beautiful. Thank you. Vivian's gaze shifted to Harper, appraising. And you must be the famous Harper Lee. You've certainly made an impression. Just being myself, Harper replied evenly. Seems to be a foreign concept around here. Vivian's smile was razor thin. How refreshing. Tell me, how exactly did you and Damien meet? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Harper could feel the weight of listening ears, could practically see the gossip already forming. This was it. The moment that would define whether their charade succeeded or exploded spectacularly. Harper looked up at Damien, saw the trust in his eyes, and made a decision that would change everything. "He came into my diner broken-hearted over you," she said, loud enough for the nearby guests to hear. Lucky for me, his terrible taste in women finally worked in my favor. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Harper smiled, took Damien's hand, and led him away, leaving Vivian speechless in their wake. "Did you just," Damien started, "steal the show?" Harper grinned. "Honey, that was just the opening act." Harper's phone was buzzing incessantly as Damien pulled into her apartment complex parking lot. The small building looked even shabbier next to his Porsche, with its peeling paint and flickering security light casting uneven shadows across the cracked asphalt. 12,000 notifications, Harper said, staring at her screen in disbelief. 12,000. Someone tagged me in a TikTok that has 2.3 million views. Are you serious? Damien leaned over to look at her phone, his cologne mixing with the smell of old coffee and stress sweat that seemed permanently embedded in her uniform, which she'd changed back into after the reception. "Mystery woman steals the show at Vermont elite wedding," Harper read aloud. The comments are intense. She scrolled through them, her expression shifting from amusement to concern. Who is this queen? Main character energy. She ate them up and left no crumbs. But also, gold digger alert and obvious social climber trying too hard. Damien's jaw tightened. Don't read those. Why not? They're probably right. Harper shoved the phone back in her purse, suddenly feeling foolish in the borrowed dress. I did exactly what they think I did. Took money to pretend to be someone I'm not. That's not, isn't it? Harper's voice cracked slightly. $5,000 to play dress up and stick it to your ex? That's literally the definition of what they're accusing me of. The silence stretched between them, heavy with things neither of them wanted to acknowledge. Finally, Damien spoke. Was that all it was for you? Tonight, Harper looked at him, really looked at him. His hair was messed up from running his hands through it. His perfect composure finally cracked enough to show the vulnerable man underneath. The man who had trusted her with his pain, who had laughed at her jokes, who had danced with her like she was someone worth holding on to. No, she whispered. It wasn't. Then forget what they're saying. You were magnificent tonight. You were real in a room full of people performing their own lives. Harper felt tears threatening and blinked them back fiercely. This is why I don't do this. This hoping for something better. It always ends the same way. Which is, with me alone in this parking lot, remembering that fairy tales don't happen to girls like me. Damien unbuckled his seatbelt and turned to face her fully. What if they do? What if this doesn't have to end here? Damien, I know this started as an arrangement. I know you needed the money and I needed to save face. But something changed tonight. You felt it too. I know you did. Harper's chest felt tight. We're from different worlds. You saw those people tonight. They'll never accept me. And I can't pretend to be someone I'm not forever. I'm not asking you to pretend. I'm asking you to be exactly who you are. The woman who told Madison Hartwell she eats rich people for breakfast. The woman who psychoanalyzed Patricia Cross and made me laugh for the first time in months. And what? We date? I serve you coffee while you post Instagram stories about your glamorous life? Come on. What if I deleted Instagram? Damien said suddenly. What if I stopped caring what those people think? What if I just lived, really lived for the first time in my adult life? Harper stared at him. You can't be serious. Tonight, watching you be completely yourself in that room full of facades, I realized something. Vivian was right. I'm not real. I've been performing for so long I forgot who I actually am underneath all the expectations. He reached for her hand. But with you, I remember. Harper's phone buzzed again. This time it was her mom. Where are you? I've been calling for hours. The neighbors are being loud and I can't make them stop. Reality crashed back over her like cold water. I have to go. My mom. Let me walk you up. No. Harper's voice was sharper than she intended. This isn't part of our deal. You don't get to see how the other half lives. She started to get out of the car, but Damien caught her wrist gently. Harper, wait. The money. I had my assistant transfer it to the account you gave me. But this conversation we're having, this has nothing to do with any arrangement. Doesn't it? Harper pulled free, her walls slamming back into place. You paid me to be your date. Mission accomplished. Thanks for the dress and the 5-star experience. You don't mean that, don't I? Harper stood outside the car now, looking down at him through the open passenger door. You want to know the truth? Tonight was amazing. You're amazing. But amazing doesn't pay my mom's medical bills or keep the lights on. Amazing doesn't change the fact that you'll go back to your penthouse and your 3 million followers, and I'll go back to slinging coffee and pretending this never happened. It doesn't have to be like that. Yes, it does. Harper's voice broke slightly. Because anything else is just another performance, and I'm tired of pretending to be someone I'm not. She slammed the car door and walked toward her building, her heels clicking against the pavement like a countdown to the end of something beautiful. Behind her, she heard Damien's car engine idling, heard him call her name once, but she didn't turn around. As she climbed the stairs to her studio apartment, Harper could still hear the faint sound of jazz music in her head, could still feel the warmth of Damien's hand on her back. But when she opened her door to find her mother pacing the small space like a caged animal, reality settled around her like a familiar, suffocating blanket. "Harper, where have you been? The voices were so loud tonight, and I couldn't find my pills, and the man upstairs keeps playing that music." "I'm here now, Mom," Harper said, kicking off the designer heels and immediately feeling smaller, more like herself. "Let's get you some tea and your sleep medication." As she helped her mother settle into bed, Harper caught sight of herself in the bathroom mirror. The Chanel dress, the perfect makeup, the confident woman who had stolen the show at a millionaire's ex-fiancée's wedding. It all felt like a dream now. But when her phone buzzed one more time with a text from Damien, "This isn't over. You can push me away, but what we have is real, and I'm not giving up on it." Harper allowed herself one moment to believe that maybe, just maybe, fairy tales could happen to girls like her. Then she turned off her phone, hung up the borrowed dress, and went back to being exactly who she'd always been. Harper Lee, waitress from Vermont, taking care of her mother and dreaming of a life she could never have. Except now, for the first time, those dreams had a face. 3 days after the wedding, Harper's life had become a surreal nightmare of internet fame she never wanted. The TikTok video of her and Damien dancing had spawned dozens of copycat posts, reaction videos, and think pieces about authentic versus performative femininity. Her workplace had been invaded by influencers trying to recreate her aesthetic, and she'd already quit 2 shifts because she couldn't handle the constant staring and phone cameras. "Table 6 wants to know if you're really dating Damien Caldwell," her coworker Casey announced, sliding behind the counter with an eye roll. "And Table 2 asked for your autograph, on a napkin." Harper didn't look up from the coffee she was pouring. "Tell them I'm just a waitress who got lucky for one night." That's not what the internet thinks. Have you seen the Instagram fan accounts? Someone found your high school yearbook photo and posted a glow-up compilation. Harper's hand shook, spilling coffee across the counter. She'd been avoiding social media since Sunday night, but apparently the internet had no intention of forgetting about her. "How did they find my yearbook photo?" "Honey, when you go viral, people become detectives. They probably know your social security number by now." The diner bell chimed, and Harper looked up to see a man in an expensive suit walking in with a camera crew behind him. Her stomach dropped. "Are you Harper Lee?" the man asked, approaching the counter with a microphone. "I'm Brad Morrison from Channel 8 News. We'd love to do a human interest story about your Cinderella moment at the Cross-Hayes wedding." "No," Harper said immediately, backing away from the counter. "Absolutely not. Just a few questions about your relationship with Damien Caldwell. Our viewers are fascinated by this real-life fairy tale." I said no. Harper's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "Get out of my workplace." But the cameraman had already started filming, the red light glowing like an accusation. Harper felt trapped, cornered in the place that had always been her sanctuary. "Is it true you're from a working-class background? What's it like dating someone worth millions?" "We're not dating," Harper snapped, her carefully constructed composure finally cracking. It was one night, one fake arrangement that got blown out of proportion by people with nothing better to do than romanticize someone else's life. The reporter's eyes lit up like he'd struck gold. "So you're saying it was fake? That the chemistry everyone saw was just an act?" Harper realized too late that she'd walked into a trap. Anything she said now would be twisted, taken out of context, used as clickbait. The walls felt like they were closing in. "Turn off the camera," she whispered. "Harper, is Mr. Caldwell aware that you consider your relationship fake? How do you think he'll react to—" "I said turn off the goddamn camera!" The explosion of rage that followed surprised everyone, including Harper herself. She grabbed the nearest thing, a full coffee pot, and for one wild moment considered throwing it at the lens. Instead, she set it down with shaking hands and walked straight out of the diner, leaving her apron, her dignity, and probably her job behind. She was halfway home when her phone rang. Damien's name flashed on the screen, and Harper realized the news crew had probably gone straight to him for comment. "Don't," she said instead of hello. "Harper, I just saw the news report. Are you okay?" "No, I'm not okay. I'm viral, Damien. People are showing up at my work, my apartment building, asking my neighbors about my life. Someone posted my mother's medical records online. Did you know that? Her therapy records, her prescriptions, everything." The silence on the other end was deafening. "I'm sorry," Damien said finally. "I never thought." "Of course you didn't think. You live in a world where privacy is something you can buy, where NDAs and security teams protect you from consequences." Harper's voice was bitter, exhausted. "I don't have those luxuries. Let me help. I can hire security. I can have my legal team." "Stop," Harper laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You still don't get it. You can't fix this by throwing money at it. You can't buy your way out of what we've done." "What we've done? Harper, we haven't done anything wrong." "Haven't we?" Harper stopped walking, standing in the middle of the sidewalk as reality crashed over her. "We lied. We pretended to be something we're not. And now the whole world thinks they know our story, except none of it is real. It felt real to me. Feelings don't matter when your mother is getting harassed by reporters asking if she's proud of her daughter for landing a millionaire. They don't matter when you come home to find strangers taking pictures of your building for their Instagram stories." Harper's voice cracked. "My mom had a panic attack this morning because someone knocked on our door asking about my transformation journey. She's been hiding in the bathroom ever since. Harper, I can't do this anymore. Whatever this is, whatever we thought it might become, it's over. It has to be." "You don't mean that." "I do." Harper closed her eyes, forcing herself to say the words that would end everything. "Delete my number. Forget we ever met. Go back to your perfect life with your perfect Instagram and pretend that night never happened." "What if I can't? What if I don't want to forget?" Harper felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "Then you're going to have to learn, because this fairy tale is officially over." She hung up before he could respond, turned off her phone, and walked the rest of the way home in numb silence. When she reached her building, there were 3 more reporters waiting by the entrance. Cameras ready. "Miss Lee, can you comment on Damien Caldwell's statement that he's deeply in love with you?" Harper stopped dead in her tracks. "What did you just say?" "Mr. Caldwell just posted on Instagram that he's in love with you and asking for privacy during this time. He also announced he's taking a break from social media to focus on his personal life." Any response? Harper stared at them, her heart hammering against her ribs. He'd told the world he loved her. On Instagram. To 3 million followers. She started, then stopped. "I need to see my mother." She pushed past the reporters and ran up the stairs, her mind reeling. When she opened her apartment door, she found her mother sitting on the couch with Harper's laptop open, tears streaming down her face. "Mom? What's wrong?" "I saw the video," her mother whispered. "The one from the wedding. Harper, you looked so happy, so alive. I haven't seen you look like that since before your father died." Harper sat down beside her mother, suddenly feeling like a lost little girl. "It wasn't real, Mom. It was just pretend." "Was it?" Her mother's eyes, clear for the first time in months, met hers. "Because the way that boy looked at you, that wasn't pretending. And the way you're crying right now, that's not pretending either." Harper touched her face, surprised to find it wet with tears she didn't remember shedding. "Sometimes," her mother continued, "the best things in life happen when we stop trying to protect ourselves from getting hurt." As if summoned by her words, Harper's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I'm outside. I'm not leaving until you talk to me." Dee Harper looked out her window and saw Damien leaning against his car, surrounded by reporters but ignoring them completely. He was looking up at her building like he would wait forever if necessary. "What do I do, Mom?" Her mother smiled, the first real smile Harper had seen from her in years. "You go get your fairy tale, sweetheart, and this time you fight for it." Harper found Damien exactly where he'd promised to be, leaning against his Porsche in the parking lot, looking like he'd been through a war. His usually perfect hair was disheveled, his expensive shirt wrinkled, and there were dark circles under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept since their phone call. The reporters immediately swarmed toward her, shouting questions and thrusting microphones in her face. But Damien stepped between them and Harper like a human shield. "Back off," he said, his voice carrying an authority that made them hesitate. "Give us some space." "Mr. Caldwell, can you confirm that you've deleted your Instagram account?" one reporter called out. "Is it true you're giving up your inheritance for love?" shouted another. Harper stared at him. You deleted your Instagram? 3 million followers gone. Damien's smile was rueful. Turns out I don't need validation from strangers when I have the real thing standing right in front of me. Damien, let me talk first, he said, stepping closer. Please. I've been standing here for 2 hours figuring out what to say, and if I don't get it out now, I might lose my nerve. Harper nodded, acutely aware of the cameras focused on them, but somehow not caring anymore. You were right about everything, Damien began. I was performing my life instead of living it. I was so afraid of being real that I forgot what real even looked like. And then you walked into that diner with your terrible attitude and your sharp tongue, and suddenly I remembered who I used to be before I became a brand. You don't have to do this in front of them, Harper said, glancing at the reporters. Yes, I do. Because I want the whole world to know that Harper Lee from Vermont is the most real person I've ever met, that she's brave and fierce and funny, and she doesn't need designer clothes or fancy locations to steal every show she walks into. Harper felt her walls crumbling. What about your family? Your company? Your whole life? My whole life is standing right here, Damien said simply. Everything else is just noise. One of the reporters thrust a microphone toward them. Miss Lee, how do you respond to critics who say you're just a gold digger who got lucky? Harper looked at the camera, then at Damien, then back at the reporter. For once in her life, she decided to stop protecting herself and tell the truth. You want to know what really happened? She said, her voice carrying across the parking lot. A broken-hearted millionaire stumbled into my diner at 11 p.m., looking like his world had ended. And instead of treating him like a celebrity or a paycheck, I treated him like a human being. We made a deal. $5,000 for me to be his date to his ex's wedding. But somewhere between the diner and the dance floor, something real happened. She turned to face Damien fully. I fell in love with a man who laughs at my terrible jokes and doesn't try to fix my problems for me. Who sees my mom's illness as something we face together, not something that makes me damaged goods. Who deleted 3 million followers because he'd rather have one real connection than 1,000 fake ones. So this is real? The reporter pressed. Real as coffee at midnight and dancing like nobody's watching, Harper said, never taking her eyes off Damien. Real is choosing love over safety and fairy tales over fear. Damien stepped closer, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. Harper Lee, will you take a chance on us? Not the Instagram version or the tabloid version, but the real, messy, complicated version where we figure it out as we go. What about the media circus, the attention? We'll handle it together. Security, legal team, whatever it takes to protect your mom and give us space to be normal. Damien's hands found hers. I'm not asking you to change your life for me. I'm asking if I can change mine for you. Harper looked around at the cameras, the reporters, the chaos that had become her life. A week ago, she would have run. A week ago, she would have chosen the safe path, the predictable path, the path that led nowhere but kept her from falling. You know what the real fairy tale is? She said loud enough for everyone to hear. It's not the dress or the dancing or the millionaire. It's finding someone who sees you completely, all your flaws and fears and broken pieces, and chooses you anyway. She stood on her tiptoes and kissed him, right there in the parking lot of her shabby apartment building, surrounded by reporters and cameras and the whole watching world. It was messy and imperfect, and absolutely nothing like the movies. It was real. When they broke apart, Damien rested his forehead against hers. So is that a yes? That's a yes to figuring it out together, Harper said. A yes to real over perfect. A yes to whatever this becomes. Even if it gets complicated? Harper grinned, the smile that had been getting her into trouble since she was 5 years old. Honey, I'm a waitress from Vermont who just kissed a millionaire in front of half the internet. Complicated is my middle name. As they walked toward her building together, Harper's phone buzzed with a text from her mother, watching from the window. He's a keeper. Bring him up for coffee. Your mom wants to meet me properly, Damien said, reading over her shoulder. Fair warning. She's going to ask you about your intentions and probably make you look at my baby pictures. I can handle baby pictures. What about the fact that I snore and I'm grumpy before coffee and I sing off-key in the shower? Damien stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression serious. Harper, I spent 3 years with someone who was afraid to be human around me. You could snore like a freight train and sing like a dying cat, and I'd still choose you every day. Good, Harper said, pulling him toward the stairs, because you're about to find out I was underselling the snoring situation. 6 months later, Harper would look back on this moment, standing in a parking lot, choosing love over fear while the whole world watched, as the real beginning of her fairy tale. Not the wedding or the dress or the viral video, but this. Two imperfect people deciding to build something real together, one honest conversation at a time. The internet would move on to new stories, new scandals, new viral moments. But Damien and Harper would still be there, serving coffee at the diner he'd bought and renamed Harper's, much to her mortification, taking care of her mother together, and proving every day that the best love stories aren't the ones that look perfect from the outside. They're the ones that feel perfect from within. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very brave, those love stories begin with a millionaire, a waitress, and the courage to steal the show, not just for one night, but for the rest of your life. 2 years later, the morning light streamed through the windows of Harper's Culinary Institute classroom as she adjusted her chef's coat one final time. Today was graduation day, the culmination of 2 years of early mornings, late nights, and the kind of hard work that had nothing to do with luck or fairy tales. "You ready for this?" Damien asked from the doorway, looking perfectly at home in his jeans and flannel shirt. The designer suits had mostly disappeared from his wardrobe, replaced by clothes that suited the man he'd become rather than the image he'd once maintained. "As ready as I'll ever be," Harper replied, smoothing down her graduation cap. "Still can't believe I'm actually doing this." "I can." Damien crossed the room and pulled her into his arms. "You've worked harder than anyone I know. You earned this." Through the window, Harper could see the small crowd gathering for the ceremony. Her mother sat in the front row, looking healthier and more vibrant than she had in years. The combination of a new therapist, adjusted medication, and having something to be proud of had worked wonders. Next to her sat Casey from the diner, and surprisingly, Patricia Cross, Vivian's mother, who had become an unlikely ally after Harper had catered a charity event that raised $50,000 for mental health awareness. "Is that Vivian over there?" Harper asked, squinting at a familiar figure near the back. "She wanted to come," Damien said. "I hope that's okay. She and Richard are doing well, by the way. She says marriage to someone who actually loves her feels different than being engaged to someone who was just going through the motions." Harper smiled. The four of them had grabbed coffee a few months ago. An awkward but healing conversation that had finally put the past to rest. "I'm glad she's happy. She deserves someone who sees her, really sees her." Speaking of seeing people, Damien reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. "I know we said we'd wait until after graduation, but I couldn't help myself." Harper's breath caught. "Damien, I know it's not the most romantic setting," he said, dropping to one knee right there in the empty classroom. "No fancy restaurant or sunset on the beach. Just us, being real, like we always are." "It's perfect," Harper whispered, tears already starting to fall. "Harper Lee, you changed my entire life the night you served me coffee and attitude in equal measure. You taught me that being real is better than being perfect, that love is a choice you make every day, not just a feeling you fall into." Damien opened the box to reveal a simple, elegant ring. Nothing flashy, nothing designed for social media, just beautiful. "Will you marry me? Will you keep being real with me for the rest of our lives?" "Yes," Harper said, laughing through her tears. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." As Damien slipped the ring onto her finger, Harper heard applause from the doorway. Half her graduating class had gathered to watch, along with several instructors, all of them grinning and filming on their phones. "Well," Harper said, looking around at all the faces, "I guess we're viral again." "Good thing I like performing for an audience now," Damien said, standing and spinning her around. Later, at the graduation ceremony, Harper walked across the stage to receive her culinary arts degree with Damien cheering louder than anyone in the audience. The girl who had once served coffee at a roadside diner was now a certified chef with dreams of opening her own restaurant, dreams that felt achievable rather than impossible. "What's next?" the local newspaper reporter asked during the reception. Harper looked at Damien, then at her mother, then at the ring sparkling on her finger. "We're opening a farm-to-table restaurant here in Vermont. Nothing fancy, just good food made with love. And we're getting married next spring. Small ceremony, nothing that'll break the internet. Any advice for other people looking for their own fairy tale?" Harper considered the question seriously. "Stop looking for the fairy tale and start living your real life. The best love stories aren't the ones that look perfect from the outside. They're the ones built on choosing each other every single day, even when it's messy and complicated and nothing like the movies." That evening, as they sat on the porch of the house they'd bought together, a renovated farmhouse with a view of the mountains and room for Harper's mother to have her own space. Harper reflected on how much had changed since that night in the diner. "Any regrets?" Damien asked, following her gaze across the valley. "Just one," Harper said, then grinned at his concerned expression. "I regret not charging you more for that first cup of coffee. I had no idea you were such a good investment." Damien laughed, pulling her closer. "Best $5,000 I ever spent. Actually, it was the best free refill you ever got," Harper corrected. "The $5,000 was just the entry fee. Everything after that was earned." As the sun set over the Vermont mountains, Harper realized that her real fairy tale hadn't been the viral video or the designer dress, or even the proposal. It had been this: the quiet moments, the daily choices, the slow and steady building of a life with someone who loved her exactly as she was. Sometimes the best stories don't go viral, sometimes they just go home, and sometimes that's the most magical ending of all. If you were Harper that night in the parking lot, would you have accepted the $5,000 to accompany a stranger millionaire to his ex-fiancée's wedding? Or would you have thrown the coffee in his face and told him to find a professional escort? And more importantly, do you believe true love can be born from a financial arrangement? Or did Harper and Damien only fall in love, despite the money involved? Tell us, are you team, take the money and see what happens? Or team, love can't be bought? Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments.